This episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra, the official beer sponsor of the NBA, who's getting you closer to the game than ever with exclusive prizes. Enter for your chance to win at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Enjoy responsibly. 2024 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri. Michelob Ultra registered courtside sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins October 19th, 2023 and ends June 12th, 2024. Multiple entry periods. See official rules at MichelobUltra.com/rules for free entry, entry deadlines, prices, and details. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Very excited, Kieran Maguire, I have to say. It's 20:37 on Sunday evening, and you've just got back to Liverpool from Sheffield, Kieran. What a pleasant afternoon you had in Sheffield.
Yes, yeah, it was amazing. It's the most goals we've ever scored away in the top flight. So yeah, fantastic.
Very conflicting for a football fan watching a team he hates having to beat a team that he's involved in a relegation battle with. I would have settled for 2-0, but they won 5.
Well, we were helping you with the goal difference. Could be important to Palace at the end of the season.
Yeah, I've stopped worrying about Sheffield United, to be perfectly honest. I'm more worried about lawyers, to be perfectly honest. It's legal. It's Everton and Nottingham Forest legal teams are the teams that are really worrying me. I can see you're in a hotel, Kieran, but they seem to have put you in the attic room.
But they have. Yes. I arrived here quite late, and I mean, it's the place I stay every week, and I walk through the door, and you know that look when they go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting him." So yes, I've been stuck in the attic, and it's gorgeous, and it's got oak beams and the full works. So it's very it's very evocative. It's very emotional place, but yeah, not quite what I was expecting.
Gentlemen of your stature shouldn't be in the attic room. I like to think that the staff at that hotel, Kieran, speculate on a weekly basis about what it is you do for a living. So, what's he doing here? Is he some kind of spy? Is he a pornographer? Like, he just turns up every week. He demands the same room.
I'm not demanding, but no, I'm not demanding. I might have to stay here for a longer period of time than I envisaged because I've not seen the Baroness for 2 or 3 weeks, and I forgot to tell her that I was going to Sheffield and setting off at 7 o'clock this morning. And when I mentioned this to her yesterday, with my logic, which was, well, I'm going up north anyway, but she says, but you're leaving it. Yeah, normally leave at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I was going, well, yeah, it's not that far away. And no, so I'm up there. Yeah, it's. I think I need to do a bit of regeneration of my love for my wife.
She knows you love her, Kieran. She knows the way your mind works. It's the sort of thing that could slip anybody's mind. The fact that they're getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to Sheffield. I've quite often gone to bed of an evening thinking, what is it I'm doing? So, anyway, it's questions day, Kieran, but we're going to start in a slightly different way because I'm going to let you get your breath back. We're going to start with a letter we had, or a letter you had, I should say, from a chap called Eric Hanslip. And it's off the back of our discussion a couple of weeks ago about whether or not your house price goes up in value if you are situated next to a football ground. And Eric, who's an older gentleman, I would guess, by the time of the story, sent us this wonderful email and said, your discussions on the pod regarding living near a football ground prompts me to tell a story about my father. He was born in Highbury in 1908 when Arsenal, brackets Woolwich Arsenal, were playing south of the river. I've got a friend who's a Tottenham fan in his 70s, still refers to Arsenal as a South London club. He won't have it. It's not a North London derby. They're a South London club. Eric says when his dad was 5, His family were living in Avenel Road. Now, if you were familiar with the old Arsenal Stadium, Avenel Road was where the main entrance to the ground was situated, which was a lovely sort of fancy Art Deco affair. They famously had the commissionaire, of course, who used to stand there in his uniform. And on the 6th of September 1913, says Eric, 2 days before Dad's 5th birthday, Arsenal played their first match at the Noobs ground, and his family were just 5 terraced houses from the North Bank. I talk about going to Arsenal, but in Dad's case, Arsenal came to him, which is a lovely sentiment. Later, the family moved to Conewood Street, which is a road opposite the main entrance, and features in a scene from the Fever Pitch film where the Colin Firth character is anxious to live in a house close to the ground and goes to view one in this street. I'm grateful that Arsenal moved from Woolwich to Highbury, otherwise my father and I might well have ended up supporting the team that had been closest to his home before that, Tottenham, and probably would have spent a lot of time in therapy. I'd like to thank Eric for that email, because it just we talk a lot in our books, Kieran. We've talked about the history of football, we talk about how teams come about, we talk about where they play, and here's a chap whose dad lived on the street that Arsenal moved into. So his dad was a proper part of football history, and so Eric was as well. So it's a sort of thing that I love, and I know when you sent it to me, so it made you feel warm and fuzzy inside, which that really made me pleased, because I've often tried to explain to you what drinking alcohol is like. I've never been able to. And for the first time, you reading this email. So, Eric, thank you for that. We send you our very best.
Yes,
if you have any photographs, if you've got photographs of your dad or of the house, we'd absolutely love to see them. And if anybody else has similar stories, we're always open to actual real-life stories of football history. Kieran, our first question comes from Robbie Whittaker. And Robbie Whittaker says, as a Blackpool fan, there was a time when we had a good rivalry with Scunny. Now, if Robbie doesn't mind, I'm going to use the word Scunthorpe from now on, because I shudder. I say the word Scunny, and it feels somehow like a Shakespearean disease. I've come down with a touch of the Scunny. I know an effete southerner, but I'm going to say Scunthorpe. But Robbie says, it's been shocking for me to see what a precipitous fall that Scunthorpe have had down the league pyramid, which of course we have been following, Kieran, with a great deal of unease. Robbie says, you often talk about the financial impact of falling out of the 92, but what's your assessment of what happens when a previously established Football League club falls straight through Tier 5 into Tier 6? I do appreciate by the time you reach this question, Scunthorpe may be back and flourishing. If so, perhaps you could just talk about another team of plucky underdogs instead. It's an interesting question, Kieran, because it has been the most astonishing fall from grace for Scunthorpe recently, isn't it? So it does give us a chance to reassess where they are now and to answer Robbie's question about what happens to a team with that stature when they do fall so low.
Yes, it can be a very significant redress and reset for the club, which can take a long period of time. If I give a couple of examples, we've got Stockport County, who were relegated to the National League from League Two in 2011, and then they dropped into National League North a couple of seasons later. So it wasn't immediately down to National League North, but it was pretty quick. And they spent 4 seasons getting back. And I used to live in Stockport when I was living in Manchester, and Stockport used to get decent crowds. So by National League's North standards, they were taking big numbers, and northern clubs have always had fantastic fan bases. We've seen, I think, this weekend, the Bury ended up not going to the Isle of Man with their fans, about 500 or 600 of them being stranded at Manchester Airport when the match effectively wasn't able to take place. So in the case of Stockport County, they are now back in League Two, and they're having a pretty good start and a pretty good season. But it's come at a financial price, and I think it's fair to say that the club, to a certain extent, was between a rock and a hard place for a few years in National League North. It finally got back to the National League, but the National League itself is incredibly competitive. And Scunthorpe and Stockport County are the club with the biggest losses, financial losses ever made in a single season in the National League in order to get back out and into the EFL. Part of the reason for that is that you don't have the benefits of the TV deal. The EFL deal, whilst modest, certainly compared to that of the Premier League, but it's also modest compared to the other two divisions as far as the EFL are concerned, because clubs in League Two get 8% of the package, and clubs in the Championship get 80%. But even that is probably worth around about £500,000 a year. Compared to probably about 10 to 20 grand in the National League, and effectively diddly squat if you get as far as low as National League North was concerned. And then to get out of the National League, it's an expensive business because you've got so many clubs who are former members of the EFL, plus you've got aspirational and ambitious owners of clubs in the National League itself who want to join the 92. So it has been tough. If we take a look at the clubs that sort of have gone down, York City, they went into the National League in 2016 and straight down to National League North, and I think they found it quite tough. If you take a look at the attendances for Scunthorpe United, they're averaging nearly 4,000 this season. And the two other clubs with the highest attendances in that division are Hereford FC, who are no longer Hereford United, and Chester FC, who are no longer Chester City, because both of those clubs have effectively gone out of existence. So that is just how tough it is to get out of those divisions. So, we wish all the best to Scunthorpe because it has been very precarious, I think, for their fans and so on. But that's where we are. So if getting down is sad, fans still stay loyal, but getting back up is really tough.
I'd be interested to hear from some of our overseas listeners about this, Kieran, especially on the European continent, because it strikes me, you look at teams like Oldham, Chesterfield, Southend, Stockport and Scunthorpe that you've mentioned, Aldershot, Hereford. It seems to be a peculiarly English thing where clubs can plummet, hurtle through so many divisions. You don't. I can't really think of too many situations in European football where well-known established clubs suddenly have such a precipitous descent. So I'd be interested to hear from overseas listeners about their experiences. So I know there are a couple of clubs that went out of business and then came back again and had to start again. But it seems to be a peculiarly part of the English pyramid. I mean, it doesn't tend to happen in Scotland, for example. Then it doesn't seem to happen the other way around so much now as well. It's like the days when a Wimbledon will go from the fourth division to the first division seem to have probably long since gone. So I'd be interested to hear from overseas listeners about that as well, about their stories of smaller teams. I mean, is there something about the nature of the English pyramid? I mean, in a way, maybe that's good. Maybe the fact that the English pyramid is so wide at the bottom acts as a kind of safety blanket in a way, or safety net.
I think it is part of the culture and the identity and the heritage of individual towns and cities that they feel the importance of having a football team is absolutely critical. So when Hereford United went bust, when Chester City went out of business, the fans said, we still want a football club, and also Bury. We have Bury AFC,
of course, yeah.
So I think people want to preserve that because that is, how do I explain myself if I'm from a town or city, or a town tends to be the case, which doesn't have a football club, and the idea that we let it cease to exist, and we've not done anything to resurrect it, even in an alternate form as a Phoenix club. I think it's just testament to fan culture in this country that it is something which is so important to us that we will do our best to preserve it, even in a slightly different format.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Kieran, I've just realised we do have a question coming up about small clubs going the other way, going upwards. But such is the nature of you, me and producer Guy, that we've decided not to ask it after in the logical place where it should be. We've decided to have a diversion, Kieran. And this diversion comes from Paul Begley. And if the Baroness has got the hump of you at the moment, this strikes me as a sort of spreadsheet heaven question that would have the Baroness the locking doors and taking the dog for very long walks and just shout, "What do you mean you didn't know you were leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning?" Paul Begley has, again, I suspect this is one of the questions that started in a pub and they've decided there's only one way to resolve this, and let's get Maguire in. Let's shine the POF logo into the sky with the Maguire torch and get Maguire in. Because Paul Begley says, what are the top 3 worst transfers in history from the financial side, as in transfer fee paid, wages, goals to games ratio, appearances, etc. Eden Hazard to Real Madrid stands out to me, £100 million plus wages and returned 4 goals in 4 years. Or maybe Sanchez to Man United, or maybe Dembele to Barcelona. Some major flops out there, Kieran. So I'd be interested in your take.
Yes, I think this is the perfect pub question because there cannot be a definitive answer.
Okay.
But I certainly, when I independently started to look at this, and I think Griezmann came up in terms of Barcelona. I think Barcelona have to have a special blue plaque for signing Griezmann for more than £100 million, Philippe Coutinho for more than £100 million, and Ousmane Dembele for more than £100 million stroke euros. And all 3 of them, I think it's fair to say, didn't succeed. Griezmann went back to Atletico Madrid on loan within a couple of seasons, and such was the reluctance. And this is sort of chaucery of the ultimate, that under the terms of Griezmann's loan arrangement from Barcelona back to Atletico Madrid, they had to pay a €40 million buyback fee if he played more than a certain amount of time. So therefore, they only played him for 30 minutes a game because it meant that they kept within the kept within the parameters, and they bought him back for €20 million, having sold him for €120 million. So that's quite spectacular. And then he went on to become the all-time record goal scorer. In fact, he's just achieved that at Atletico Madrid. So that really rubs it in. Certainly, Philippe Coutinho, when you look at his goal-scoring record at Barcelona, he won 2 La Ligas in his first 2 seasons, but something wasn't quite right, and he ended up going on loan to Bayern Munich, which came back to haunt Bayern Munich. Then he went on loan to Aston Villa, and Aston Villa finally bought him, and that didn't quite work out. So there was all of that taking place. And because they were spending so much money, it meant that they couldn't continue to employ Lionel Messi. So when I look at those transactions sort of individually, you can say, well, was it the Griezmann one? Was it the Coutinho one? Ultimately meant that they had to get rid of Lionel Messi to comply with the La Liga cost control rules. So I think those 3 are certainly significant. In terms of Romelu Lukaku, I've got him down in my top 3. He cost Chelsea £97.5 million. He scored 8 goals. He'd signed a 5-year contract, and he's been at Chelsea now for 3.5 seasons, and he still scored 8 goals because he's ended up going out on loan, and nobody's willing to pay a fee for him, because his wages are so high at Chelsea that Chelsea is still having to pay a significant proportion of those wages, and other clubs are getting the benefit. So there's that. And I think, again, Alexis Sanchez, who was, I can only describe as being signed on the crest of a slump, in the sense that his career at Arsenal was brilliant. He was brilliant for a few years, and then he went off the boil. So why did Manchester United sign him? I mean, that one did seem very strange. He only scored 4 goals for Manchester United. The benefit for Manchester United was that he was actually part of the player swap with Mkhitaryan. So, that one wasn't great. A shout out for Torres going from Liverpool to Chelsea for what then was a record fee. And again, that one didn't work out, but Chelsea fans will point out, well, hold on, he did score in a cup final. So that wasn't, but his career went downhill. And they tend to be strikers because they tend to be more high profile. But if you take a look at what we refer to as impairments, and impairments is where the accountants go, even after amortizing the players, we still think the player's worth less than his accounting value, and it's not that frequent. Chelsea, I think, in terms of Lukaku and Kepa, the goalkeeper, I think those are two of the biggest decreases in value, and Manchester United have probably put through one in respect of Lukaku as well.
I remember seeing Torres score. I think he scored a hat-trick for Liverpool against Fulham. And I remember thinking, for me at the time, he was up there with Henry, Bergkamp. And then it just proves that some players can only do it in some teams. But it's interesting. So I was going to say, the problem with Paul's question is it's much easier to quantify if a striker's been a terrible buy. But having said that, I think most Palace fans would admit that arguably our worst buy ever was Valerian Ismail, who I think we paid £5 million for as a centre-back. It was shocking, terrible. And he's now managing for what? Who's Brighton's worst buy, would you say?
In the Premier League era, we signed a number 9 from the Netherlands, who was our record signing, getting about £15 million, which for Brighton's. And he then admitted he was scared of heading the ball, which for a number 9. So Jurgen Locadia, you go, well, that seems strange. He was more interested in being a DJ than a footballer. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being more interested, but you could have told us beforehand that you were centre forward that didn't like heading the ball.
Well, I suppose that's not the sort of thing that comes up in the medical either.
No.
It doesn't occur to you. Maybe they should do that. The club should just dangle a ball from the doorway, and if he ducks underneath it, you go, oh, we're not signing him.
Yeah, because normally when you have an interview for any job, it's sort of, are there any other things which you think we ought to know about you? And he could have brought it up at the time.
Yeah, he could have done, but then he would have lost his huge signing on fee. But I'm quite pleased actually that if any club is going to sign somebody who's a better DJ than footballer, it'll be Brighton. So we'll keep him on anyway. Fat boy needs someone to carry his records for him.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
This episode is brought to you by Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business. Want to advance your career or switch fields? An MBA from Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business can help. Earn your degree from a top-ranked business school with a thought-provoking curriculum, one-on-one leadership coaching, support from experienced career counselors, and full-time, online hybrid, and accelerated MBA formats. Join the intelligent future. Visit cmu.edu/Tepper to learn more.
Well, we started talking, Kieran, about teams that have plummeted. Here's a team that's, by comparison, skyrocketed. And this is a question from Cole Arkinstall, which is name of the week, I have to say. Congratulations, Cole. Cole Arkinstall says, last season, my local club, Rushall Olympic, gained promotion to the National League North, the highest step the club's ever played at. Despite this obviously being an incredible achievement, I was wondering to what level clubs of this size, with average attendances of around 300 in season 22-23, would have to make adjustments to infrastructure on and off the pitch. It's a humble little club with some fair-sized clubs now coming to visit, so surely more bars and an away end are obviously ways of making money. But what else will they need to do to get up to league standards? Now, I'm on about to say here, Kieran, that there's a book out that Cole might like to read that has exactly this scenario in it. It's a book based on our pod, Kieran, Unfit and Improper Persons. And we talk about that in the book. But just as by way of a praise for Cole, I mean, it's a fantastic achievement for Rush All Olympic. How far can they go, and how much is it going to cost them?
I think things, if the club makes more progress, are going to become quite pricey. If you move to the National League, there is an expectation. Yeah, you can still have a 3G pitch, 4G pitch, if that's what you've got already. But in terms of the number of seats, you've got to sort of at the back of your mind be prepared for a move up to the EFL, where they rightly protect the integrity of the competition by saying there is an expectation in terms of the minimum number of seats, minimum number of away seats, facilities for referees, facilities for even simple things like the vans for the broadcasters, because they've got a lucrative broadcast deal with Sky and so on. First of all, fair play to Rush All Olympics. I've looked at their accounts, and they used to be an unincorporated entity, which was effectively a members club. So they didn't have the protection given by limited liability status, so that they had to operate on a break-even basis, and they've spectacularly successful. I didn't know that they were based in Walsall. I did a little bit of background, and Walsall is a fine club, and we've mentioned them on a couple of occasions ourselves. But there's of all of the, if you were to say, name me another town in the country where you think there could be scope for a second league club, I don't think Walsall would have come to many people's lips. If we were on Celebrity Pointless, we'd have struggled with that one, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we are going to. This is our new campaign, everybody. So we're going to get on Celebrity Pointless. So that won't be the first time you mention it. Kieran and I have been talking about this every time we meet. Let's get on Celebrity Pointless, which you would enjoy. Oh no, Osman's not doing it anymore, is he? So you wouldn't have the unusual experience of being the small one in the studio. I like Walsall is a great town. I love Walsall. The Arboretum is fantastic, and I'm sure the people of Walsall hate it, but I love the fact that it's Noddy Holder's voice in the lift when you go to the art gallery there. I have to do it once a year. I'm not suggesting the people of Walsall are obliged to go up and down in the lift in the museum every day, but it's probably less amusing to them than it is to us. Dan Connors as our next question. And this is an interesting one. It's a simple one, Kieran, but it's not something I think we've discussed at any length before. Dan says, can clubs protect themselves financially if they sign a player who has a history of injuries? For example, can they include a contract clause where if a player is unavailable due to injury, they only get a small percentage of wages? Some clubs seem to have a much higher risk tolerance for signing these types of players. I mean, this is a discussion Palace fans have had recently for various reasons, whether it's training or whether it's the background of the players themselves. Eze and Elise, for example, probably will only play 10 games each this season. So you do wonder whether contractually that will have any effect. I'm guessing, I know the two words you're going to be coming up with, Kieran, but
yes. You've spotted those words well in advance. I think as soon as you saw this question, yes, I did contact one of our secret sports lawyers and also one of our secret agents, and they said it is possible to have a pay-as-you-play clause in a contract. It's not the norm because injuries are, for most players, are seen as being an occupational hazard. And what you don't want, it then becomes counterintuitive. If a player knows that there's going to be a draconian reduction in their remuneration should they be subject to an injury, they're going in for a 50-50 ball. And they'd have, for example, Mason Holgate might have pulled out of that tackle today if he knew that.
Yeah. Not so good, was it?
That potentially he might have injured himself as opposed to trying to find Karu Matoma's knee at 90 miles an hour. So if the player does have a record of injuries, then I think in order to protect itself, the club is likely to say, we will pay you on a match-by-match basis in terms of your appearance. And if the player is confident, or the player's representative is confident that they can find an alternative, then they'll go and find it. But quite often, the reason why the club is in the position of offering such a contract is they're probably aware that the player has had a history of injuries. So it tends to be in respect of players who have not managed that many fixtures on a historical period of time. Their previous contract has run out, or their contract has been cancelled by their previous club, and therefore, we've often said when it comes to negotiation, one party isn't a stronger party that is in a stronger position than the other. And in these particular circumstances, the club is in a stronger position than the player, and the player effectively has to accept whatever's on offer.
I suppose it must work the other way around as well, Kieran, when sometimes a player and his agent may not want to go to a club where you have a manager who's encourages full contact in training, for example, or who prefers much more physical training without the ball. So there are some players who think that's a club that won't suit me, because I think I'm more likely to break down in training at that club than I am at another one. This next question, Kieran, it comes from a Palace fan, so I'm always keen to read those out. I'm really looking forward to your answer to this question, because I'm slightly surprised by it, to be honest, because I didn't think this was an option. But Graham Burt, hello, Graham. I always like to say hello to Palace fans. Hello, Graham. Cheer up. Things will be fine. Every little thing is going to be all right. Which is unfortunate. There's a friend of mine who works at Palace who persuaded the DJ, for want of a better word, to put that song on at half-time last week against Chelsea. So we're all happily singing Every Little Thing's Going to Be All Right, just as Chelsea equalised right at the start of the second half. So, but, Graham, we're fine. It's all good. We'll be 12th. Don't worry. But Graham says, as a Crystal Palace fan married to a Sheffield United fan for many, many years, congratulations. I was fortunate enough to get to see both clubs in FA Cup semi-finals over the last couple of years. Hopefully, Graham, you weren't together in the playoff final back in the day when Hopkins scored in the last seconds. But having said that, said Graham, this is a bit that really interests me, Kieran. I paid £115 for 2 tickets to watch Palace in the semi-final, but only £55 for 2 tickets to watch the Blades. We sat in virtually the same seats in both years. So my question is, who sets a ticket price and why the considerable discrepancy? And this is interesting, Kieran, because it implies that the clubs have some say in the setting the ticket prices here, and I wouldn't have thought that was the case, is it?
No, they are very much set in advance by the Football Association. And remember, the FA Cup is there partially to generate revenues for the FA. So, I was quite surprised. And I took a look at the prices for the FA Cup semi-final last year, because Brighton played Manchester United. And they varied between, I think, £40 and £85. So it's one of those strange things. You can be 3 seats apart and you're paying 50 quid. And because there has to be a demarcation line, it could be that Graham was just on the wrong side of that. But there certainly have been issues in terms with the rate of increase of ticket prices, especially for the bigger tournaments. And there's no doubt that the FA Cup, which went through a fallow period, appears to have regained popularity with coaches and fans and so on. We are seeing fans travelling in bigger numbers, and hats off to all those Maidstone United fans that were queuing up round the block for their FA Cup match to look forward to, and I hope they have an absolutely fantastic day out, and we wish them all the best.
Yeah, if there are any people from the FA listening who would like to get in touch and explain the ticket pricing policy, we'd love to hear from you, because I was slightly taken aback by this question. First of all, you start thinking, well, maybe the FA think that Sheffield United fans can afford a little less than those fans from down in London. But I'd be interested to get some clarification from the FA on Graham's question there. Jamie Moss has our next question. Jamie says, would there be merit in removing the 3 p.m. blackout, but only for the Football League and the leagues below. Do you think this would have a material effect on the value of the EFL TV deal? And we've seen discussions recently as well, Kieran, about removing that blackout for women's football as well. So women's games could be shown at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon as well on TV.
Yes, I think finding a definitive spot for TV purposes for the women's game is proving to be a challenge. And I also got to say at this point, huge congratulations to Arsenal women's team and the marketing department there. To have a sellout at the Emirates is a hell of an achievement, and it's indicative of the increase in interest in the game. And they've got 6 home matches taking place at the Emirates this season, and they've all had fantastic crowds. But this is another benchmark to which they should be very proud. In terms of the 3 p.m. blackout, the positives from it would be that you should be able to extract a bit more money from the overall value of the deal, but only a bit more, because the EFL and Sky have an agreement which is going to come on stream when the new deal kicks in next year, in relation to showing practically every game, with the exception, in fact, it is every game with the exception of the 3 p.m. blackout. The 3 p.m. blackout is there, in theory, to protect grassroots football. How do you go about defining grassroots football? If we take a look at the Championship this season, we've got clubs like Leeds United and Sunderland and Derby County and Portsmouth, and many others, all of whom have fantastic fan bases, and Leicester and Southampton, and many others. What about amateur football that takes place at 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon? And then I'll think to myself, well, hold on, for half the year, it doesn't kick off at 3 p.m. It kicks off at 2 or 1:30 because those clubs don't have floodlights or anything similar. It's not stopped other sports, amateur rugby league, amateur rugby, from those bodies taking place. So I think there is scope to look at it, and for somebody to take a step back and to do some proper research into this. I think the fear is that if we take a look at the impact on attendances and we say grassroots football is anything other than the Premier League, which I think isn't quite right. But if we take a look at attendances at, say, League One, League Two, National League, when there have been Champions League matches taking place, and compare them to Tuesday nights when Champions League matches are taking place, and so on, there is clearly an impact, but it's not a huge one. So you have to be a little bit cautious about reaching too many conclusions. And then you've got to say, well, if there's going to be a financial negative impact on grassroots football, but the overall cake is bigger, can we give some of the increased money to grassroots football? And then, of course, we fall into this trap that we presently have between the Premier League and the EFL as to how much money is an appropriate amount. So, that's the downside. I do feel that do we need? We've got so much football on. Do we actually need to have 3 p.m. football being shown live? If you want to have an interaction with the game, the chances are that the local radio station will have some sort of broadcast, and you can watch TNT Sports, you can watch Sky, you can listen to TalkSport and 5 Live, and you'll get a very good summary of what's taking place. And then you can watch the match. You can watch the highlights from the matches 15 minutes after the final whistle. So we have almost saturation point when it comes to football, and I think this would saturate it even more, which would make it again more complicated for the women's game if we're trying to grow that as well.
Yeah, we've discussed before, Kieran, the reasons why the 3 p.m. kickoff historically became traditional are many and complicated, and not everyone agrees why it happened, but
Yeah.
it did. I'd be devastated to lose traditional 3:00 kickoffs. There's still something about a Saturday afternoon. If Palace aren't, it's like this weekend. Palace aren't playing till Monday. There's something about just lazing around on the sofa, listening to scores come in or watching scores come in at 3:00, and also thinking, "Wow, I can't wait for match of the day now," or "I can't wait to." Somebody will send me the goals on YouTube later. I'm perfectly happy not to see them straight away. And talking of the price of football at the grassiest of grassroots levels, Kieran, we're going to talk. I've just decided this. I'm putting my producer cap on.
Cool.
We're going to talk about. You sent a tweet today about a local borough raising the prices of
That was awful.
pitch hire. So we're going to talk about that, Kieran, on Thursday in our news pod. We'll also talk about another story you mentioned as well, which relates to Everton and the downgrading of 777's financial prospects. It looks like this is going to be a big few days for Everton. Big game tomorrow night against us. Rumours that the appeal will be announced within the next 7 days, it seems. And of course, everyone's putting two and two together and coming up with why they think all these people in pubs who go, "No, I know what's going to happen." It's like, you don't. It hasn't been announced yet.
Nobody knows. No.
So there's no point us speculating until it happens. But it does seem as though that is imminent, and of course that will have, you'd imagine, an impact on the next set of charges. So it is a big week coming up for Everton, and the 777 news that we'll be discussing only adds to the imponderables at Everton at the moment. It's not a good time at that club. Our penultimate question, Kieran, comes from Chris Devine. An interesting one, again, spreadsheet heaven for somebody.
Yes, it was spreadsheet heaven, yes.
Chris Devine says, at the end of last season, Leeds appointed Sam Allardyce for the last 4 games. It was reported that Big Sam would be paid £500,000 to manage the team for the last 4 games and would have got a bonus of £2.5 million if he'd kept Leeds up. This made me wonder, what is the most a manager has been paid for managing a club if it was based on a per-game basis? And before you answer this, Kieran, as we're talking about legendary managers of a certain age, I think it's an ideal time for me to obviously say that we wish Roy Hodgson very well in his current illness. I understand that he's fine and stable, but every Palace fan, every football fan will only be too happy, I'm sure, in joining me in accepting, I hope, our best wishes for his recovery and for his future. Meanwhile, Kieran, back to Big Sam and this eye-watering deal.
Yes, I did some research in this, and first of all, I absolutely echo. We've often said that football and football rivalry, it's panto for grown-ups who should know better. So Roy Hodgson is a damn good human being, and we send him big hugs and love from all at the Albion as well. It's the least we can do. In terms of this, there's sort of a couple of things which came to light. First of all, Mourinho has earned £70 million in redundancy pay.
Wow.
Which is quite spectacular. So, but having said that, he's delivered trophies and he was at Chelsea. He's always been in work, and when he's moved on, he's managed to do extremely well. But I did some calculations, and in my opinion, sort of the most expensive managerial appointment, and not all of this money went to the manager themselves in terms of wins, was Graham Potter at Chelsea. Because under Graham Potter, who I am a huge fan of, I think he's a really good guy. Chelsea won in the Premier League on 7 occasions. Now, we don't know his salary, but if the media figures are to be believed, during that period of time, he was there for around about 7 months. He was supposed to be on around about £1 million a month. So he'll have earned £6 or £7 million. He had a 5-year contract, so they would have to give him, in my opinion, a minimum of a 1-year payout. So that's going to be another 12 million. And then I got hold of Brighton's accounts for 2022, and they put in their footnotes. Oh, by the way, we've received £21 million compensation for something. We're not going to say what it is. And then we go, well, okay, that's Graham Potter's leaving fee. So you add those figures together, and that comes to a grand total of £40 million, which means that he was effectively paid £6.5 million per victory in the Premier League, whilst at Chelsea. Now, we also have to say, Chelsea made reasonable progress in the Champions League, but from a pure Premier League basis, that was quite an expensive experience as far as Todd Bowley and co were concerned. And it's not stopped them from raiding Brighton left, right and centre ever since. And they're currently, by all accounts, trying to take Brighton's head of recruitment because it's 12 months since they last taken Brighton's head of recruitment.
Relax yourself, Kieran. Run yourself a nice warm bath. There are worse things to worry about. Why would Brighton, Kieran, want to reveal that figure in their accounts then? Why could Brighton not just say, this is £21 million is a figure we got from Chelsea for compensation?
Under the accounting rules, clubs are very loath to give specifics. So under accounting rules, if a transaction is what we refer to as material is significant to anybody reading, would the disclosure or non-disclosure of that particular transaction, would it change your perception of the business? This was after the end of the season, but you're supposed to put, clubs are supposed to put all significant transactions. So I suspect there would have been a conversation between the club and the auditors, and the auditors said, well, £21 million, that's all, let's face it, you're Brighton, you're a club with an annual turnover of about 140 to 150 million pounds in a good season in the Premier League. That's 15% and also whilst this is sort of layers of four-dimensional chess. They want to send out the message, look, we're Brighton, we're not pushovers, so don't try it. Everybody knows it's about Graham Potter leaving, but we're going to not specifically say that. And we've seen similar, I think, when Steve Bruce went from Sheffield Wednesday to Newcastle. Newcastle paid £6 or £7 million in compensation. If we take a look at Middlesbrough's recent accounts, they said, we received £2.5 million in a legal settlement, but we're not going to say what that legal settlement is. And everybody goes, that'd be compensation for Derby in the year that they got into the playoff. So it's sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Look, aren't we actually quite good at this type of thing without wanting to name players? And I mentioned in respect of Lukaku and the impairment of Chelsea's player pool that year. Again, it's impolite. I think it's disrespectful towards the player to say, look, we signed Lukaku. He hasn't been very good. We've had to write down his value. Nobody would want that. And because first of all, no player ever sets out to not have an impact when they join a club. And the reason why things don't work out can be for a myriad of reasons. But you can, reading between the lines, it is something which you have to do as an analyst.
So I'm sorry to come back to this, Kieran, but it just intrigues me. So, because if it had been me reading Brighton's accounts, I'd still be wondering, what's that 21 million quid for? I can't. And you could point me, you could say like a crossword clue, well, it's 7 down, 4 across. To think of a manager that left, I'd still be going, no, I can't. Where's 21 million quid come from? But could you go then to the equivalent accounts of the same period for Chelsea, and would you find in Chelsea's accounts a payment of £21 million that they don't disclose what it's for? Because you mentioned the Middlesbrough Derby one. Derby didn't produce accounts, so you wouldn't be able to go to Derby's and find that £2.5 million payment there. But would you be able to just join the dots by looking at Chelsea's accounts?
Yes, and what Chelsea are likely to do, and Chelsea haven't yet published their 2023 accounts, is that they will say, and these were in Brighton's 2022, but they had to put it in as a post-year end because it's such a big transaction. If we take a look at Chelsea's 2023 accounts when they come out, there will be some sort of anodyne commentary costs associated with personnel changes. And of course, you've also got, so you'll have Potter's payoff, you will have the compensation to Brighton, and you've got Thomas Tuchel's payoff as well. And you have to peg them together, especially with Tuchel, to to work out where you think the overall totals lie.
Our final question, Kieran, comes from Jimmy Mulvihill. Now, I initially thought this question came from Jimmy Mulvihill, who's
Yes,
the man who runs Hat Trick Productions, who make Have I Got News for You? So I thought, well, I'm going to have to read this question out. I don't care how bad it is. I'm going to have to read because he pays me a lot of money every year. Also, Everton season ticket holder as well. So these are very awkward times when Palace play Everton. Jimmy Mulvihill has a question that's become very topical, it turns out. And Jimmy says, with the recent developments of Kylian Mbappe being given more control over the running of PSG as an organisation, in addition to his responsibilities as a footballer, and with the rise of the footballing super-rich superstar, can you see a time in the near future where a footballer runs down their contract and then buys a club outright and signs himself to them? Now, 20 years ago, this would have been a ludicrous question, but increasingly, it's not so much.
Yes, I think this could only apply realistically to the top 2 or 3 players in the world, players who are global brands in their own right. And we've seen this where, to a certain extent, the player is bigger than the club. And if we take a look at Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of his impact in the Saudi Pro League, take a look at Lionel Messi with Inter Miami, and there's still repercussions from that in terms of what's happened in Hong Kong. I believe that the Chinese authorities say, we are very disappointed, and a friendly with Argentina, which was planning to take place, is no longer take place, and so on. So there's been a lot of ramifications from that. Those players could be tempted to run down the contract and then do something similar to what we've seen with David Beckham and Inter Miami, in the sense that they set up the football club, and there's no reason why Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi could not have been involved with, especially with Messi and Inter Miami. He could have been involved in setting up Inter Miami, buys a stake in the club, and says, right, I was a free agent because my contract at PSG has ended. I'm going to get involved in this new venture. That will work. It won't work, and this is not disrespecting any of these clubs. If you're a left back at Burnley, if you're a centre half at Walsall, it ain't going to happen, because you don't have the resources, and B, you don't have that global cachet in terms of Cristiano Ronaldo is a marketing tool. As far as many, you look at the number of Instagram followers that he has. If he puts on a certain set of sunglasses, then you'll get an awful lot of likes on Instagram. Well, you can do that in terms of setting up your own football club if you're that big a player in your own right.
I think that's a perfectly apt description of Cristiano Ronaldo, a marketing tool. That's exactly what he is. Also, if you're the left back at Burnley, I imagine you're probably still under a duvet rocking gently backwards and forwards. Just at the moment after yesterday, God love him. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you. That will get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes. And you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, you can email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And if you want to buy any of our merchandise or books, you can go to the same website. We're back on Thursday. Hopefully, Kieran will have uncurled himself now, because it's getting into a tighter and tighter ball in that attic as I watch. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to said Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always, and thank you for Eric for that email. I was genuinely touched because we do love football history and heritage, and the closeness of a football club to the people that surround it. It's absolutely brilliant. There's various ways you can support the club. If you don't want the adverts, Patreon is an option for you, and we're grateful for all that as well. There's another way that you can support the club, and that's to give us a review. It helps us in the charts, helps us with the algorithms. We've got quite a few guests coming up, and David Bernstein was absolutely fascinating on Friday, especially the stories of daring do in relation to Wimbledon and Rangers. But you can write whatever you want as far as the review is concerned. So you could even say you would rather have the show presented by Mr. Magoo and Mason Holgate, and it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to us.
Well, talking of Mr. Magoo, Kieran, how did the referee not give a straight red?
Well, to be fair, I think it happened so quickly, and he was on the wrong side because I was sort of behind. Mitoma was running away from us, and we saw it was a foul. And initially, I don't think the referee even gave a foul. I think it was the linesman. But he then gave a yellow, I think, on the advice of the linesman, and then was called across VAR. And having seen it on VAR, the referee wouldn't have seen what you subsequently saw on camera. So the right decision was made in the end.
Yeah, except to make the tackle in the first place, because that was an awful tackle. Yes, no criticism intended to referees. Sometimes you can be too close to something, can't you? Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.